If something in your relationship feels off, but you can't explain why. If you've spent years trying harder in the relationship and yet it just keeps hurting, this space is for you. Welcome to the Covert Narcissism podcast. Anyone here ever over-explain, like everything? In this episode, we're exploring over-explaining, emotional exhaustion, and covert narcissism. Why learning to pause without defending yourself can actually help your nervous system finally stand down. Stepping back can help you stay grounded instead of stuck in that dreaded fight or flight mode. Many survivors of covert narcissistic abuse find themselves over-explaining everything. Let me give you a few examples. You find yourself explaining why you were quiet in the car. You weren't mad. You're just tired. No, nothing is wrong. And yes, you still had a good day. You explain why you didn't respond to a text right away. Your phone was charging. You were in the shower. You didn't see it. You weren't ignoring them. No, you're not upset. You explain why you chose a restaurant, or why you didn't choose that restaurant, or why you changed your mind halfway through, just in case it looked inconsistent. You explain why you need to rest. You didn't sleep well. Work was stressful. You're not being lazy. You'll be fine tomorrow. Yes, everything is okay. You explain why you bought something small. It was on sale. You needed it anyways. It won't affect anything, and you didn't overspend. You explain why you forgot something minor. You had a lot on your plate. You weren't being careless. You're not irresponsible. You explain your tone in a message. You add extra emojis, extra words, extra reassurance, just so no one misreads you. You explain why you're hungry, or why you're not, or why you're eating this instead of that. You explain why you're late, or why you're early, or why your timing wasn't intentional either way. You explain things before anyone even asks. You explain things that no one questioned, yet at least. You explain to prevent a reaction before it happens. And the exhausting part isn't even all the explaining itself, although that is. It's the hypervigilance underneath all of this, anticipating all the responses, the reactions, trying to fix things before they go sideways. I want to talk about what happens when we stop over-explaining. A client recently told me this story. She said to me, "There was a moment in my marriage that still stands out to me because of how quiet it felt inside my body. Not quiet in the way things used to go quiet when I was bracing for impact, but quiet in a way that felt strangely steady. We were standing in the kitchen and something small had gone wrong, and of course we all can relate to that. I don't even remember what it was anymore," she continued. "A tone, a comment, a look, one of those ordinary moments that used to spiral into something so much bigger. He reacted the way he always did. Sharp, defensive, blaming, his voice rose, his words twisted, and the familiar energy filled the room. The tension, the accusations, the blaming, the insistence that I had done something wrong. But this time, something different happened inside of me," she said. "I didn't rush to explain. I didn't try to clarify my intent. I didn't scramble to smooth it over or prove I wasn't the problem. I just stood there." And as he continued, I noticed something I had never been able to notice before. I wasn't taking it personally this time. I wasn't shrinking or hardening or strategizing. I was watching, almost like I had stepped back a few feet inside of myself. It felt oddly neutral, like sitting in a movie theater, popcorn in my hand, watching a familiar scene unfold on the screen. I could see his behavior so clearly. The way his reaction didn't actually connect to what had just happened. The way the story he was telling had very little to do with me at all. I could see the pattern instead of feeling trapped inside of it. And for the first time, I could also see myself with a kind of clarity that didn't come with shame. I noticed how often I had jumped in before, how quickly I used to try to fix, soften, explain, or rescue the moment. Not because I was weak, but because I was trying to survive, because I wanted peace in this relationship. But now, standing there, calm and quiet, I realized something else too. This moment, this clarity, was an opportunity of growth for me. I could see my own patterns now without judgment. I could feel my nervous system staying regulated instead of reactive. I could tell the difference between what belonged to him and what belonged to me. There was space, awareness, choice. In this strange internal calm, I found myself responding differently than I ever had before. Not defensively, not urgently. I offered simple, reflective comments, ones that invited openness rather than accusation. Things like, "That's not how I experienced it, but I can understand how it landed that way for you." Or, "It sounds like this feels really upsetting to you." Or even, "I'm open to talking about this." I wasn't trying to win the moment or convince him of anything. I was simply naming what I observed, and I stayed present. But he could not meet me there. As I stayed calm, his behavior escalated. My non reaction unsettled him. He kept pushing, circling, trying to pull me back into that old familiar dance. And that's when it became painfully clear. While I had stepped into a new way of being, he was still trapped inside his own reactivity. He couldn't step back and observe with me. He couldn't pause. He couldn't self reflect. The very thing that felt like growth to me was threatening to him. She continued, saying, "That was one of my very first real popcorn moments. Sitting there internally, watching the scene play out. No longer starring in it the way I always had. And once you experience a moment like that, I could never unsee any of this. It doesn't mean everything suddenly became easier. It did not. But it does mean that something very important shifted in me. Now I realized that this calm wasn't something I created by explaining myself better, which is what I had been trying for so many years. The calmness inside of me arrived when I stopped performing for someone else's emotional chaos and drama. Now, I'm going to tell you, I could relate to her story so much, and we talked about this in great detail. I remember the shift in my own marriage when I just quit reacting to all the chaos. Why did I quit reacting? Just because I hit a wall, I couldn't do it anymore. I was so exhausted. I just quit all the over explaining. I quit defending myself. I quit justifying everything. I simply stopped. I now just became an observer within my own home. And this was a major step towards healing for me. Many of you listening did not become over explainers because you were insecure or unsure of yourself, even though that is what we are told over and over. But no, you became over explainers because at some point, explaining kept you safe. Explaining your tone, explaining your intention, explaining your feelings, explaining why something hurt, explaining why it mattered. Over time, explaining becomes a reflex, a way to manage tension, a way to prevent conflict, a way to soften someone else's reaction before it even arrives. For many of you, explaining was emotional insurance against a very present threat in your world. The problem is that explaining keeps your body extremely activated. It feeds that hypervigilance. When you are explaining yourself, your system is alert. It is tracking responses, scanning for misunderstandings, preparing for pushback, anticipating reactions, rehearsing what you will say next if this doesn't land. Your system learns that you are not safe and that resting is not an option. In this environment, in this situation, spontaneous conversations go out the window. But when you finally stop explaining everything, even briefly, your nervous system pauses. It's like you take a brief pause in this constant state of threat. Your system finally exhales. even while standing in front of the covert narcissist watching their drama unfold. Now, I want to talk about that calm for just a moment, because it is often extremely hard to trust it. You stop explaining, and suddenly there's this space. It's just there. It's quiet, it's slow, it's like you're frozen in time, and it's foreign. And almost immediately, another voice jumps in your head and says, "Be careful, don't check out, don't avoid, don't go numb, you need to fix this." But here's an important distinction: you are not avoiding. You're just watching, you're observing, you're learning. Avoidance feels tight. It feels frantic and frozen. It carries urgency and guilt underneath it. But relief? No, relief is different. Relief feels spacious. Relief slows things down. And that calm you feel when you stop explaining, when you stop dancing their dance, it's not a failure of insight. It's not denial. It's not avoidance. It is relief. And how you can tell the difference is how it feels inside your body. And we're going to talk about that near the end of this episode. When you stop explaining, your nervous system recognizes that it is no longer being asked to perform. There is no argument to win, besides the fact that there is no win with a covert narcissist. So quit trying. There's no perception to manage, because you're never going to be successful at that anyways. There's no emotional labor being demanded of yourself because you choose to stand down. By the way, when you stop carrying all of the emotional weight of the covert narcissist, that feeling is beyond words. When you quit taking all the responsibility for their feelings, it's like you just resigned from the toughest job in the world, which, to be honest, was extremely underpaid. And when you quit, your body finally receives the message that it can stand down and it can rest. This carries a massive amount of relief. That feeling is unfamiliar because your system has spent years on high alert. Now, I want to say something here very clearly. You are allowed to pause without deciding anything. Pausing does not mean you're minimizing what happened or what is happening. Pausing does not mean that you're denying reality. It does not mean you're failing to act. It means that your nervous system is asking for safety before strategy. Many survivors are afraid of pausing because they believe that their momentum is fragile. They fear that if they stop thinking, processing, analyzing, or planning, then they will lose clarity, or they'll get stuck forever, or they'll leave too soon, or that their world will totally fall apart. I remember feeling like I could never relax because if I did, the price was too high. Emotional warfare in my home, my kids emotionally hurt or crushed, their mental health paying the price for me resting. But I realized that I could not make healthy decisions in this heightened state. That pause, when it hit, and just happened spontaneously for me the very first time, all of a sudden, it gave me space to breathe, to return to my character, to make calmer decisions, and to prepare for what was coming. Decisions made under stress rarely bring peace. They bring urgency. They bring second guessing and doubt. They bring self-blame. That internal pressure that says, I should know what to do by now, it usually doesn't come from the present moment. It comes from a long history of being required to manage outcomes quickly, to anticipate moods instantly, to prevent blow-ups on the spot, to smooth things over as fast as you can, to keep things from getting worse now. Awareness does not demand immediate action. Sometimes the most regulating thing you can do is to let yourself know that nothing is required right now. You are allowed to take a pause and breathe right now. And it is, I call them popcorn moments. It is like watching a movie and eating popcorn. I want to take a minute and explain a very real neurological reason why these popcorn moments work so well. When you step back and observe instead of reacting, your nervous system receives new information. It begins to understand that this moment, even if it is uncomfortable or confusing, is not actually a threat to your safety. And when the brain no longer reads a situation as a threat, It does not need to activate the fight or flight mode. That's the kicker. When we perceive threat, our body shifts into survival mode. Blood flow and energy move away from the parts of the brain that are responsible for logic, emotional regulation, decision making, and it moves towards the systems designed to protect us quickly. But when you stay calm and you observe, you're sending a different signal. You're telling your nervous system, I am safe enough to stay present. That signal allows your prefrontal cortex, your higher thinking brain, to remain engaged. This is the part of the brain that helps you to think clearly, to regulate your own emotions, to respond rather than react. It's where perspective lives, it's where choice lives, and it's why in those popcorn moments, you can suddenly see things so much more clearly. You can notice your own behavior without judgment. You can see the patterns of what is playing out in front of you. You can stay grounded even when someone else is escalating. There is nothing magical about this process. Your body is simply staying out of survival mode. When you are not in fight or flight, you have access to your executive brain instead of being hijacked by your old fear responses. That's why these moments feel so different. You're no longer trapped inside the chaos. You're watching it with clarity, presence, self-control. For the next week, I want to invite you into a very simple practice. Nothing dramatic, nothing that requires a conversation or decision. Simply notice when you feel the urge to manage someone else's emotions. This often comes in the form of defending yourself, explaining yourself, hypervigilance, overcompensating for their mood. It might be in a text message, a conversation, or even in your own head as you rehearse what you would say next. When you notice that urge, pause. Pause for like 3 seconds. That's it, 3 seconds. Let your shoulders drop. Take one slow, deep breath and say nothing. This is when you become the observer. In those moments, as that 3 seconds develops, quietly check in with your body, not with your thoughts. Your thoughts are going to go down that path of over-explaining and hypervigilance. No, check in with your body. Notice what happens when you don't immediately jump in to explain yourself. Do you feel tension or do you feel relief? Anxiety or space? Now, there's no right response here. You're not trying to correct anything. You're simply observing. This is a popcorn moment. You're watching the scene unfold without jumping into it. You're stepping back like you're watching a movie. You might also practice pausing within yourself. When your mind starts explaining why you stayed, why you left, why you reacted the way you did, why you didn't, why you haven't decided yet, gently interrupt your own explanation. Tell yourself, I don't need to solve this right now. Let that be enough. Let the pause be the practice. You are playing observer. This homework is not about becoming passive or disconnected. It's about giving your nervous system some breathing room. You're not avoiding everything. You're regulating yourself. And for now, that is more than enough. Now, this month on my Sunday episodes was about orientation, not decisions, not confrontations, not labels, not ultimatums. It was about helping your internal compass recalibrate. And if all you do this week, if all you do at the end of this month is stop explaining yourself to anyone else, including yourself, that is huge. You are not falling behind by pausing. You are not losing clarity. Nothing is being taken away from you by slowing down. Instead, you are healing. Next month, we will talk about why self-blame and gaslighting take such deep root and why even with clarity, doubt can still dominate. But before we go there, your nervous system gets to land. You are not avoiding anything. You're finally letting your body catch up. Thank you for joining me, and I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. If there were ever an audience that I wish did not have to exist, it would be this one. Because of what it means you've lived through. I'm truly sorry that you understand this so deeply, and I'm really glad that you're here. May this be a place of safety, clarity, and peace. You are not alone anymore, and you don't have to figure this out by yourself. If this episode resonated with you, please subscribe so you don't miss future conversations. And if you'd like to learn more about the support, resources, or coaching that is available for you, you can visit covertnarcissism.com. While I hate it for everyone who understands what I am talking about, I'm really glad that you're here, and I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. The information provided by Renee Swanson, Covert Narcissism Podcast, and CNG Life Coaching is for educational purposes only and is not to be used for diagnosis purposes. It is not intended to be a substitute for clinical care. Please consult a healthcare provider for guidance specific to your case. This material discusses narcissism in general. Renee shares stories from her personal experience as well as from those that she has worked with for several years. Her material does not claim that any specific person has narcissism and should not be used to refer to any specific person as having narcissism. Permission is not granted to link to or repost this material to support an allegation or support a claim that any specific person is a narcissist. That would be an unauthorized misuse of the material and the information provided. Thank you.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.